Break down for me HR1. I've read a bit of it. There are some things that I actually like, but there are some really alarming things.
It's incredibly alarming because HR1 nationalizes elections. You talk about nationalizing production and confiscation of property. What HR1 does is takes elections away from the states. It says that all across the United States of America, there will be universal mail-in ballots. It says that there will be no voter registration reviews anywhere in the United States of America. No picture ID for voting in the United States of America. Felons can vote. There will be same-day voter registration and voting. There will be online voter registration. And it sets up an independent commission for redistricting. States right now do their own redistricting. Why do the Democrats want to take over redistricting? Because Republicans control 62 of 99 legislative bodies across the United States of America. So the Republicans are in control of the political reshaping for the next 10 years of the respective states. The Democrats don't like that. So HR1 is completely unconstitutional in every way, shape, form, or fashion. Now, of course, the Democrats are going to throw some nice things in there to try to, entice you to do it, and they're going to give it a real nice name, For the People's Act. but it is an oxymoronic title with the emphasis on the word moron, because what it does, it takes away the ability of states to run their elections.
What good stuff did they put in it?
I hadn't seen any, really.
Well, I'm in favor of felons being able to have the right to vote.
Yeah.
You mentioned that it sounds like you view it as a negative.
I look. I think it was don't do the crime if you can't do the time. Remember Sammy Davis Jr. saying that for Serpico. There has to be consequences and ramifications for breaking our rule of law.
I mean, the way I see it is there's two really big things for me when it comes to felons. If you commit a crime and then you're handed down some kind of punishment, penalty, or something from a judge, you serve your time for the crime, your rights should be restored. Your right to own a gun and your right to vote, in my opinion.
So should a rapist be able to own a gun and vote?
I think the answer is yes. After they've paid their debt to society.
I can't go there.
Well, what if they serve?
I got 2 daughters, so I can't go there.
But what
so
if
you and I are going to disagree on that one.
Respectfully.
Because first of all, if you did that to my daughter, you got to deal with me.
Right.
First. Yeah.
There's certain things that extend beyond the courts.
And again, I don't like the blanket one size fits all. If you want to look at certain offenses where if someone does their time, then they're restored.
I agree with
that. But
to
make the blanket statement, I can't.
And it's state by state right now, right? Like in some states, felons can vote.
Yeah, I think that Virginia is one of those states that, and
I think
there's a reason why.
I think that's actually a really good point. I think there's probably some crimes where you do not get your rights restored. So we had a conversation the other day about the Second Amendment. And I said, if the Constitution says your right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, there's no caveats in that. It doesn't say if you're a felon. So as far as as far as I see it, I mean, while you're in prison or on probation or on parole, whatever it is, you are serving punishment. You can't have a gun. But I think once you've paid your debt to society, your rights should be restored.
Well, again, and I would say that if you're a person that went out and committed aggravated assault, if you committed a gun-related crime, I don't know if I want you to come back and or spouse abuse or something like that. But let's talk. It's a good point that you talked about.
I just think it's funny that I might be further right on 2A than you.
I don't think so. I'm on the board of the National Rifle Association.
All right, you got me.
But you talk about HR8, which is another thing that just passed the United States House of Representatives. And so think about what HR8 does. Let's say you got a friend that is waiting to get a firearm, but they just had someone break into their house. And you want to, hey, here's my, P365 SIG, or here's my Glock 43. Do you know that you're now a felon because of what was just passed?
No. Well, so it didn't pass the Senate yet, though, right?
No, but it's passed in the House.
Right.
And so, again, we got to understand when we say it hadn't passed the Senate, but what we have to start thinking about, what is the mentality? What is the philosophy of governance of the progressive socialist left? Because that's what you see happening in the House of Representatives. HR 127, HR 130. I know that you got firearms here, but do you know that Sheila Jackson Lee says that you cannot have any loaded firearms in your house?
What?
That's HR 130.
Well, what's the point of having it?
Well, I'm sorry. I mean, I'm the government.
Yeah.
I know better than you.
Did it pass the House, 130?
HR 127, HR 130 have not come up, but HR 8 was passed last week.
And so this bans it effectively bans the private sale of firearms because you would need a federal background check no matter what. So there are certain places where, I'm sorry, that makes literally no sense. They like to call it the gun show loophole, but it's literally not a loophole. It's just the private sale. So let's put it this way. There are many states that allow the private transfer because it makes sense. If you live in West Virginia is a good example. The middle of nowhere in West Virginia, in the mountains, and you got a neighbor who's, maybe 2 miles down the road, and he's like, look, man, we're getting really bad
coyotes.
30 to 50 feral hogs.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, why don't I sell you this here, firearm so you can keep your property safe, help keep your kids safe and your crops or whatever.
Or even I loan it to you.
Oh, yeah, you can't do that either.
Can't do that either. That's a felony.
Right now you can in West Virginia, so long as you're not giving it to someone who is ineligible. So there is still a responsibility on you. If you're like, here, I'm going to lend you this rifle, and it turns out the guy's a felon, now you're in trouble. I'm going to sell it to you. But now, under HR8, you would have to go to an FFL and then do with the NICS background check for the individual.
The whole thing, 4473.
Right, and then go through a standard transfer. Now, me personally, I don't live out in the middle of nowhere, so I don't think if I was going to do a transfer, I'd go to an FFL anyway, just so it's a clean transfer and my name's off of it. But I certainly understand why there might be a guy who's like, for his brother, I'm going to give you this weapon to guard, your property or the 5 acres in the back I'm letting you use. HR8 would make that illegal.
Yeah.
So it's
make you a felon.
Yeah.
That's messed up.
10 years.
Like maybe, like even if maybe it could be reasonable if it was like an administrative fine of some sort.
Yeah,
like you had to pay $20.
But not even that. But think about this, okay? When my my oldest daughter was going to Southern Methodist University, she was getting her master's in biochemistry and humma because she's really smart like her mom. And so she had to stay late at night to do, lab experiments and lab works and whatever. And so SMU is located close to downtown Dallas. And so I loaned her my 9mm. Said, keep it, so that when you're walking out to your car in the parking lot, you just make sure that you're safe. HR8 makes me a felon for saying to my daughter, here, take Dad's 9mm so that you can be safe when you're over there late at night.
And I think your daughter knows how to use a 9mm.
My daughter has fired a Barrett. Okay. She's daddy's girl.
There you go.
Both of them. And so
50 BMG.
Yeah. And so this is my concern. And again, this is why I'm so glad to be here with young people, is that you are seeing a slow usurpation, confiscation of your rights by people that have a mentality of a philosophy of governance that has never done anything to promote freedom.
You mentioned earlier term limits. I'm a huge advocate for that.
Yeah, 12 years.
How would you see?
12 years.
Okay, how would we do that?
This is how you do it. Well, I mean, they're not going to vote for it themselves. Okay. And so that's why the founding fathers were brilliant. It was almost as if when they sat down 200 and some odd years ago and wrote the Constitution, they said, how can these stupid idiots screw it up? And so they figured out every single fail-safe backdoor method. And so therefore they came up with Article 5. Which is a convention of states, not a constitutional convention, a convention of states, whereby if you get 34 states and they assign delegates, they can come and they can recommend an amendment to the Constitution, like term limits on federal House of Representatives and senators. But if you get 38 states, states can actually change the Constitution. States can amend the Constitution. That's Article 5. So one of the things that you should look at is, why are these guys staying up here forever? There are certain states out there that have term limits on their state house members, state senators. Everything's working fine. So if you have 12 years up here, and I base that on 2 terms as a senator, that's 12 years, 6 terms in the House of Representatives, that's 12 years, and it's not transferable. You don't get to say, well, I've been over here for 10 years in the House, and now I'm going to run for senator, and I'll get another 12 years. No, it's 12 years total.
So we need 36 states.
34 states.
34 states.
And you can recommend an amendment to the Constitution.
And then the Senate would have to.
Yeah, the House and Senate
which
has
they
to vote
won't.
on it.
So we need 38.
38.
And do we need a majority in each state? Just 51%?
No, 38 states to come together and vote to be participant in an Article 5 Constitution of States.
Theoretically, that could just
Convention of States.
That's just the legislative bodies.
That's just the legislative bodies. Right now, I think we're at 16.
Okay.
For Republican states, the Republicans control a majority of the legislatures, don't they?
But right now we're at 16.
Wow. Well, so let me I can loop this back into the gun control thing, because you mentioned they could recommend an amendment to the Constitution. At 38, they can get it. Second Amendment says the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
Yeah.
But in New Jersey, if you bear arms, you will be arrested and you'll be a felon.
Yeah.
In New York, in Illinois, in California, your right to keep and bear arms has been infringed quite literally as bad as it could be.
And guess what? That comes back to exactly what I said. Law-abiding constitutional states. That's why I talked about in that article, constitutionalists versus secessionists. The people that are going against our Constitution, they're the secessionists.
I agree.
So when you look at a state that is telling you that you cannot have your constitutional right, I don't understand why anyone in any state will sit back and say, well, okay, you don't get to give it and take it. Just the same as you cannot tell me as a private business owner, I must shut down my business.
There was a post on the Donald Forum. They changed the name. It's Patriots.win now, where they were talking about the right to keep and bear arms has been infringed. And
Yes.
there was a lot of sentiment saying
Ammunition, magazines, all
absolutely.
of this stuff.
And so a lot of the sentiment I found to be, I'll just put it this way. I won't comment my opinion, but people were saying, then express your right to bear arms and gain judicial standing to sue in defense of the Second Amendment.
Absolutely.
That's a bold statement.
No,
to advocate
but think
for,
about
you know
it.
what I mean?
But there are two cases: DC versus Heller. Richard Heller, and I know him personally, was afraid. He just wanted to be able to have a firearm to defend himself in Washington D.C. They told him he couldn't do it. He went to the Supreme Court. He won the case. Otis McDonald, black man, Chicago, took on the city of Chicago. McDonald's versus Chicago.
That was relatively recent, wasn't it?
That was back in the 80s.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, back in the 80s. But a black man just wanted to be able to defend himself in his home. And he took the city of Chicago to the Supreme Court. So it's already been done. It's already been taken. So we have proven that it has standing across the United States. It has standing in states and local municipalities. But yet we still allow people to undermine the most important right that you have, because the Founding Fathers understood that your First Amendment rights, the freedom of speech, press, expression, symbol, freedom of religion, petition the government for redress of grievances, those are passive rights. If you don't have a mechanism to defend and secure those rights, they're going to get taken away from you. And that's why they have the Second Amendment.
The great modern thinker, Dave Chappelle,
Yes.
said the Second Amendment is just there in case the first one doesn't work out.
And he's absolutely right.
That's an amazing statement. Dave Chappelle's amazing.
But it's absolutely right.
Brilliant.
And you think about, there have been only 2 instances in the United States of America of revolution. Okay. And that was the American Revolution and in Texas. And both of those revolutions started because of what?
Gun control.
Gun control. The British
Yeah.
were marching toward Concord, Massachusetts to destroy a weapons and armaments factory. On April the 19th of 1775, they were met at Lexington Green because they understood, if you're armed, you're a citizen. If you're disarmed, you're a subject. October the 2nd, 1835 in Gonzales, Texas, the Mexican cavalry shows up because they want a cannon back that they had given to the people of Gonzales to protect themselves against the Comanche Raiders, because they were hearing about this thing called a revolution amongst the Texans. The Texans replied with that famous response, "Come and take it."
Ooh, wow.
Those are the only 2 instances. And so this is, I'm just, all you leftists that are out there, this is a very bad thing that you all are doing.
Well, so hold on. The far left, they're super pro 2A. It's the establishment suburban liberal types. So the larger portion of the left voter, the Democrat voter, absolutely in favor of gun control. But that element of progressives, the socialist types, I mean, they're armed to the teeth. They might not be nearly as skilled or well-trained or physically fit, but you can see it on Twitter. They're advocates for 2A.
That's kind of like the guy that was part of an Antifa Black Lives Matter rally down in Austin, Texas, and he had I think an AK-47. He went up to a car and started shaking his AK-47, and inside the car was an army soldier.
That's right.
And he popped him.
Yep. So look, they absolutely are in favor of guns, but again, they don't seem to be as well trained. There are some groups that are. There are left-wing socialist and communist militia types where you can tell these guys have real training, but they are few and far between.
Yeah.
But if you go to your average Antifa person, they're all about weapons. I mean, they show up with explosives. They show up with guns in Portland.
And lasers.
And lasers.
Yeah.
But we recently there was a story of a woman who was in Portland during the riots. She had I think she had like a Glock 17. They want guns. You had that guy. What was the guy who went to the ICE facility in Tacoma?
Oh yeah, Willem Vance Bronson.
Yeah, he had himself a ghost gun that he brought and was using against an ICE facility. These are leftists. This guy was avowed Antifa.
But see, the thing is that, and you delve into another subject, is that what Antifa or Black Lives Matter does is going to be acceptable. But if you have the constitutionalist, the law-abiding legal gun owner, those are the people that the other side does not want to have the firearms. And so there's a hypocrisy in that regardless. And I think that is the danger that we see.
So
there was a
the military perspective, if you were looking at this like a combat situation, would you then infiltrate the Black Lives Matter Antifa segment so that you could utilize it to overthrow or propagate your victory?
Well, I mean, that's one of the forms of maneuvers, infiltration, but we already know who they are. We already know what their structure is. I mean, look at the silliness of the fact that, Facebook, Twitter, and all these other guys, they want to kick, conservatives off of these platforms, but yet Antifa, Black Lives Matter, they're still operating on these platforms. I mean, the Iranian mullah over there, Ayatollah Khamenei, is still operating on Twitter. So, again, we know everything about them. It's so interesting is that all of these folks that were participating in January the 6th, their houses are getting raided. They're being picked up just like that, being arrested. All of these folks that we see over a year or more that have been doing these, attacks, raids, and continue to do so, nobody's arresting them.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.